Ah, yes. Coming up, my friends, we know the deal. Pack your bags. We're heading across the pond to London. The New York Football Giants are going to take on the Green Bay Packers on Sunday morning. We have injury updates around Daniel Jones and several key offensive players. Also, a look over on that defensive side of the ball as well, to say nothing of some very interesting stats that suggest the New York Football Giants and Green Bay Packers might be more similar offensively than you would think. Coming up next. Yes, friends. On a Thursday morning, it's OGP, the One Giant podcast, where, of course, we are your host over here, Adam Armbrecht, breaking down the Brooklyn Nets preseason game tonight. Over on the Locked On Nets podcast, my boy Doug Nori, and yonder there, the healthy, wealthy, and wise, the season generational ticket holder, Mr. Andrew Makowitz. How are we, sir?
Good. The Giants head to London, one of my top 3 favorite cities in the entire world is London. Yes, it is. You got New York.
You have some English. You're British, aren't you?
I'm Irish.
Some percentage.
I'm Irish, so a couple hundred miles away. But
I'm Irish. I love Ireland. I don't love England. What are we doing? We have to fight that crown for their own independence. Jesus, you traitor!
I've been to both. I just like to say, I enjoy London. I am a proper football guy. Adam, the one thing I'm upset about to start this episode is we talked pre-show. You were supposed to do this entire episode with a British accent. I don't know what happened and got lost in translation at the beginning, but it would have been great if you were talking about Daniel Jones in some kind of like ye old, accent.
Yeah. Could I even bother trying to slip into that right now? I don't know. No, I can't. And I can do it. I can't do it. So we'll see what happens here along the way. In the meantime, Andy loves England, loves football, which we all do, by the way, soccer, depending on how you want to examine it. Big fan of a little early morning football action, European style, which is what we get to have this weekend when the New York Football Giants will be over there in that 9:30 kickoff. We welcome everybody in, by the way, over on YouTube from Marty, who was here early and often, Tyrone. Everyone's got their own little morning rituals like Tommy on Thursday mornings to get themselves energized for the day or relaxed. Keep yourself mellow. It's your choice, friends. The bottom line is, before we dive in on some of these key matchup notes here, specifically the way in which the New York Football Giants offensively maybe can have success, and then what the Green Bay Packers are going to be trying to do against this defense. I said at the top, odd how similar these teams may actually be, because you don't normally think of Daniel Jones, Aaron Rodgers, and their separate offenses being a little bit more similar than not. That being the case, injury report here first. We have Daniel Jones, Wan'Dale Robinson, Kadarius Toney, Leonard Williams. I'm just saying them all at once because they were all a part of limited practice on Wednesday. So that's a positive sign for all of them. We obviously start at the top. Daniel, I thought, listen, last episode, it just, I didn't seem like Daniel Jones was going in the right direction. Or at a minimum, I took kind of Brian Dable's cheeky responses to a lot of things to be like, okay, a little bit of gamesmanship here. I'm not fully convinced that there still isn't some level of gamesmanship, as in, we know I would say it's impossible for Daniel Jones to be 90% going into this game, but he did show good mobility out there in practice on Wednesday, rolling out of the pocket. So at a minimum, it looks like he's going to be ready to go. And as Dan Duggan reported, the Giants didn't bring in any of those quarterbacks that they were working out. That's another positive indication as well.
Yeah, you saw that Dan Duggan reported that they didn't sign another quarterback, and that's important in this because when you go to London, you got to have a third quarterback there. If there is the possibility that Daniel Jones isn't going to go, Tyrod Taylor still hasn't cleared the concussion protocol. We don't know if he's going to be getting on the flight or not, so that's going to be another challenge that we face. Daniel Jones even came out and said that he surprised himself with how mobile he ended up being, given the circumstance of what happened on Sunday. And so that's encouraging news all around. You saw him have some really good range of motion, was able to roll out of the pocket and make some throws in practice. it looked like he was trending in the right direction, which I think we were both very surprised about.
No, 100%, man. Like I said, I guess the way that Dable first responded to it and kind of dismissed the idea of high ankle sprain, he said, yeah, no, not going to get into that. So I thought that it was trending in the direction of, ooh, this is going to be a little bit more serious, maybe even than we anticipated initially coming out of the game. So the fact that he's out there on the field is a good thing. Again, I'm gonna make the note that if you are Brian Dable and if you're the New York Giants, I think it makes all the sense in the world to be as coy about this as possible. As in, so my thinking here is, as we get Andy back into the conversation, my thinking here is, Andy, that it works both ways. So to your point about he looks like he's more mobile than not, I think it makes sense if you're the Giants to also say it looks like he's going to be able to go. But as long as we think at a worst case scenario, Daniel Jones would be capable of coming into as the backup, quote unquote, if his ankle wasn't fully healthy, but healthy enough, it's a good way to do a bit of a smoke screen to the Packers and say, no, he's all set. And then who knows? You could show up on Sunday in London and Davis Webb could run out there on the field, right? Like there's no harm in that. I expect Daniel Jones to be out there and giving it a go. I'll be very curious to see where is he in terms of 60%, 80%? Is he able to run? Is he able to scramble? And we can expect the Packers are going to test that early with obviously potentially though some other supporting cast members here coming back into the fold at the right time, because the Giants need, as we talked about last episode, as many weapons as possible for Daniel Jones, especially if his mobility could be limited in some capacity.
Yeah, Daniel Jones, Wan'Dale Robinson, both limited, as you mentioned. Kadarius Toney limited. Art Stapleton kind of talked to Wan'Dale Robinson off to the side and said, "How you feeling?" He gave the indications like he's basically dying to get out on the field, like he wants to be out there, and Art seems to be way more optimistic about Wan'Dale Robinson's chances to be on the field. So, I trust what he says. I expect Wan'Dale to be out there, which would be a huge boost to this offense.
Well, and by the way, it's like hearing that Wan'Dale is champing at the bit to get out there makes sense. And also it makes sense that, for however we want to talk about it, in a season like this with with one of your new draft picks, the Giants are not going to push their rookie wide receiver who's dealing with a knee injury, right? So maybe he could be out. Maybe he could have even come close to being out there last week and they waited the extra one and now we'll see him in London. Or if he doesn't play, it's going to be that cautious approach to getting him back into the fold. But man, if he can be out there, obviously, just give me any addition of dynamic playmaking. We know that Kadarius Toney also had a limited practice, but out of the two, it looks like Wan'Dale would be the closer of the pair to actually being out there on Sunday.
Yeah. When you go to Kadarius Toney, you talk about being smart about this. Kadarius Toney has a hamstring injury. We know that he's had issues before with injuries, Adam. The tough part is we know hamstring injuries just linger and linger and linger. And if you don't, you almost just want to say, shut it down for the first 6 weeks and make sure that it's healthy, because if you go out there a week or two early and you tweak it again, we're talking about this happening the entire season. So I almost rather have more caution with Kadarius Toney and say, just make sure it's right before we get you out there, because we need you for more than just 5 snaps in a Green Bay game in London.
Oh, no, 100%. I want him to be healthy. I'm frustrated with that because I've said before, like hamstring injuries a lot of times come down to preparation, to stretching, to preparing your body to be ready to be out there on the field. Things can happen where you end up having hamstring issues anyway. But he's a frustrating one for me. We'll see how that pans out here. We'll get more information going into tomorrow and heading towards Sunday, obviously. The Leonard Williams news, it looked like he wanted to be out there last week. And again, maybe a little overly cautious. He doesn't play. The Giants still get the win. And now if he can be a part of this fold, obviously it bolsters what they do there defensively, knowing that Dexter Lawrence is coming off one of his best games of his young career. Tate Crowder contributing. All these players really stepped up last week. Getting Leonard back in the fold would be huge.
The Packers are a top 10 rushing offense in the league in virtually every
legit two-headed monster, right?
Yeah, virtually every statistical category that you could think of, they are top 10. In rushing yards a game, they're 7th with 145, Adam. They rush the ball the 8th most by 29 rushes a game. And you mentioned the two-headed monster of Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. They have 2 legit backs that they can give the ball to and move the ball down the field effectively.
Mm-hmm.
We have seen the difference in this Giants defense when Leonard Williams is not on the field and what happens to our rush defense. He is going to be a massive addition to this team at a time where the Giants really need him in order to keep this game competitive and be effective on defense.
You'd like to think so. And again, it's the trickle down effect, right? If he's occupying, I always think about it, if he's occupying a body, it obviously frees up Dexter Lawrence. Vice versa, he's a more talented player than what the Giants have on their roster, while Dexter Lawrence is occupying a double team or just taking some of that space in the middle, let alone, I think that edge game really comes into fold here too. We know that A.J. Dillon's going to be more of a between the tackles guy, pounding the ball. But for Jones, who can do it everywhere on the field, out of the backfield, but as he starts to get to those edges, knowing that Leonard Williams can take on some of those assignments there across the front and let Kayvon Thibodeau, let Azeez Ojulari, the occupation of the middle of that field matters to letting those guys get out there. Although I say that while also knowing that Azeez Ojulari is dealing with an injury issue as well. Thibodeau looks like he's going to be fine, but it's going to be for him. It looks like just a season-long management of his injury, which is always what you want for a top draft pick. Have him just kind of get through it quickly as well. Evan Neal looks like he's going to be fine and out there playing on the offensive line. That's an important one. Neck issue or neck something coming out of that last game seemed to be dismissed pretty quickly by Dable.
Yeah, he basically said he thinks he's going to go. Obviously, the Azeez Ojulari injury is going to be an interesting one. We're going to have to see. I mean, we talk about it every week, but Kayvon Thibodeau and Azeez Ojulari being able to get to the quarterback and not having to have heavy blitzes, which we'll get into in a moment, is critical to success against a quarterback as good, as talented, and as visionary on the field as Aaron Rodgers really is, Adam.
Oh, of course. And listen, just as I pull up some of these stats here that we're going to get into, don't forget, Azeez Ojulari fell to the New York Football Giants because of an injury, and he ended up dropping there, and the Giants were able to kind of get a steal there in that second round. Now we're here in year number 2, and it wasn't really an issue all of his rookie season. He came on, looked strong, set a rookie record for the Giants. And now here we are, right? And here we are talking about the second time that he has some injury concerns early in the season. So we'll monitor that as well as we work towards tomorrow and see what happens there. As you mentioned, though, taking on Aaron Rodgers, different looking Green Bay Packers team offensively than we've seen in years past. They are more run heavy. They don't have Devontae Adams. They're obviously, I think, as Rodgers said coming out of that last game, still working on some things. Like they're still trying to figure out what they are offensively. I still look at this team as by the end of the year, they won't be, how could you ever be as potent as you were with Devontae Adams? But I think that they will be a offensive team that can hit you in both capacities. It has not looked nearly as progressively, fluid as you might expect just by default of having Aaron Rodgers, the rookie wide receiver in Dobbs. Obviously, he had a drop last week against the New England Patriots, taking on a third-string quarterback. So, by the way, people knock me for being hard on Daniel Jones. I think he's far better than Zappe. You know what I mean? So we should feel very bullish about what he can accomplish this weekend. These two teams, we were watching. I saw this over on ESPN. It was a great conversation with Dan Orlovsky. You have Ryan Clark there as well. You have Canty on there. Mina Kimes chimes in. By the way, I think one of the best, something that ESPN, and it's hard to do it on national networks, whatever. This was one of the best developed conversations around an aspect of football that I don't think gets touched on enough. And it was about the function of play action passing and how critical it is to success in the NFL. The more the teams use it, the better they are. We're going to talk about Daniel Jones and Aaron Rodgers here, and specifically how it works for both of them and why it can be a big factor in this game. But the big reference that they made to me was, we talked about pre-show, Jared Goff is leading the league in yardage, and he looks like, the offense for the Detroit Lions, to say nothing of their defense, has been very impressive this season because they've moved him away from a lack of play action work, getting him into that play action, and the secondary component of being under center versus being in shotgun. All of these things are very interesting to look at when it comes to this matchup here on Sunday.
Yeah, and they go on further, and this is where I think us as general fans don't fully understand the difference, because I'm always like, hey, let's spread it out, go into shotgun.
Right, drop him back, get him away from the line of scrimmage. Yeah. Get him where it's safe.
Right. Let's move Daniel Jones away from the line of scrimmage so he can see the rush in front of him, has more time to throw, and can be more effective in that route. And what you realize is that is the opposite of what the Giants need to be doing, because of a few things. One, Marcus Spears and Ryan Clark and everyone.
Marcus Spears, yes, sorry.
Yeah, on the defensive side, talked about how they loved when offenses were in shotgun because they knew that the route tree, the scheme, and what they could run was about half the playbook of what it is when someone's under center. And I was like, oh, interesting. That's like half the battle. Then he talks about like where the running back is relative to the quarterback in shotgun, talks about whether or not it's going to be a handoff, whether or not he's going to be blocking on that side, or whether he's expected to go run a route. And you start thinking about it, it's like, wow, these are two guys. Obviously, they were great in the NFL, but they're just breaking it down so that all of us can understand how easy it is to diagnose what shotgun looks like. And all of a sudden you go from, oh, it's not as simple as we thought, where it's like you see everything and then you just throw the ball, to, well, the defense also has plenty of time to react. Now, play action forces them to get up into the defensive line and stop the ball right there. Whereas like, shotgun, a little quick out route, they're like, yeah, I'll give you 3 yards. And as Ryan Clark said, I'll defend the next blade of grass. It was fascinating to me to see how a defensive team likes to see shotgun as opposed to an I formation.
Yeah, because it made me think about it. The first thing triggered in my mind was Adoree Jackson, right? That closing speed we've talked about. Well, in a lot of those opportunities, whether it's in shotgun, so he has a better ability to diagnose it. Now, I think based on how your offensive line play is, whether that's good or bad, based on what your personnel groupings are, being in shotgun can certainly be beneficial to you. So it's like you're playing this cat and mouse game of, well, the percentage of my playbook that the defense can kind of take off the table, okay, it's 50% of the playbook is gone. But the 50% I have remaining could be 90% effective, right? Like it's like,
right.
10% of the time it works every time, right? So you're playing that battle, I think, on the offensive side of the ball. And from Daniel Jones' perspective, the other thing that they talked about there before we get into specifically some play action stats here, from a Giants perspective, the other thing that Ryan Clark and them were talking about was then when you are in shotgun. So now play action, yes. But again, even if you're working play action, the difference between being able to turn away from the line of scrimmage if you're a quarterback, hide the football, that creates another layer of deception for the defense where they're trying to determine, is he going to be handing it off? Is it not? It creates that hesitation level. If you're in shotgun, yes, I can fake that handoff. I can put it into the belly of Saquon Barkley and pull it back. Yes, it's true, but also there's a limitation to how much you can actually deceive the defense because it is still out there in front of them. When we talk then about this play action, so there's a couple of things here. The New York Football Giants have run play action on a third of all dropbacks so far this season. This past week, which you would not be shocked by at all. Here's what you wouldn't be shocked by and will be shocked by. They used it on 53% of their snaps of their offensive dropbacks in week 4 against the Chicago Bears. I thought it was shocking that it was third most in the league. So there was two other teams that were doing it more than that for the New York Football Giants. And we talk so much about how Chicago is like, Jesus, are you ever going to notice that Daniel Jones just keeps the ball? And I will say on some of the replays that I went back and watched, Daniel Jones did a very good job on those play action naked bootlegs of really selling, the mannerisms of a quarterback matter when you run that play action fake, right? Aaron Rodgers is always very good at this. He has that little kind of holds it by his hip, right? He fakes the handoff, puts the ball down by his hip and just kind of drifts away and then pops up very quickly, very alert, looking downfield. Where is my receivers? Where are my route combinations? I thought Daniel Jones did a good job of selling the fact that unlike Aaron Rodgers, Daniel Jones wants to be able to run with that ball. So his goal is to sell the idea that I kind of look, I don't know, like clunky or almost drifting a little bit more away from really getting out and going. And then he popped his head up and was able to pick up big chunk yards.
Well, you see in the all 22 video where the first couple of plays from overhead, you could see that Daniel Jones was handing the ball off to Saquon and continuing the rollout, and there was no one there. And the Bears were completely selling out on Saquon. And that speaks to the effectiveness of Saquon Barkley. Like, he is the reason why there's nobody home. There's no defensive end because they're selling out. Be like, there's no way they're going to naked bootleg with Daniel Jones this way when Saquon's running the ball so effectively.
Well, and I'll say though, because they talked about it too. Like, yes, Saquon Barkley is obviously a massive factor here, but when you are that outside linebacker, there's no reason, even if you suspect that it's going to be the run, they were biting down inside.
Oh yeah, they were completely over pursuing.
Yeah, like it was
way
like,
over pursuing.
Yeah, exactly. Like the over pursuit was, is what really benefited the Giants so much. It doesn't mean, listen, standard operating procedures, you're probably still succeeding on 60, 70% of those. The Giants were succeeding on every single one because it was like the Chicago Bears were like, no, not this time. We're definitely going to commit inside.
Well, and that's why. But seeing the run, you saw that the outside linebacker or the end or the edge, whoever it wasn't even giving Daniel Jones any kind of respect at all. And so they ran the
Which
same.
Is so confounding to me, by the way. I'm sorry, not to cut you off. It's so confounding to me, given the start of the season. If you're watching tape, if you're an opposing defense, and this is what the Packers are going to be looking at, why would you not be saying, hey, we're going to stay at home. We understand what Saquon Barkley. Listen, Saquon Barkley's going to get his, and we could think about, we're going to sell out against the run 100%. But selling out against the run 100% means accounting for the fact that Daniel Jones runs the ball.
Right.
Like the thing you shouldn't be doing. Yeah, exactly. Like
he has legs too, Adam. This just in. He's got two that can scamper around. And after he scores the first touchdown, you think maybe we'll just keep somebody home on the outside, and they run the same play.
Sacrifice the idea of, and we know that the Bears came into that game with really banged up, bad cornerback play out there in the secondary. But stick the safety midway down around the line of scrimmage on the outside to say, just like the spy, use the spy. That's what, again, loved it from a Giants perspective, but it was borderline impressive that the Chicago Bears were willing to make commitments and mistakes with consistency across the board. That being the case.
Adam, so turning it over just to some stats that also back up the play action, why it's so important. Yeah. The whole idea and the premise behind this is that, yes, it gives the opposing team more time to rush Daniel Jones, and we're concerned about our offensive line. But we're going to take that trade-off to have them have to think about Saquon Barkley being part of every single play. Like, that's the trade-off the Giants have to do. You think you'll have a little less time on the defensive front, but all of a sudden you might be freezing the linebackers, you might be freezing the safety in different positions. That is how the Giants are going to succeed. And the numbers back it up, especially when it comes to Daniel Jones.
Yeah, so listen, we took a look at those as well. And by the way, this past week, we'll get into it even a little bit deeper from the first 3 weeks of the season as well. But just this past week, where we know not a lot of throwing opportunities, Daniel Jones goes out with the injury. But when he did use play action, Daniel Jones, 4 of 6, 42 yards versus 3 of 7 for 29 yards when they were not using the play action pass underneath when he's coming out from underneath center. The one comparison I want to also go and double check here, and we'll talk about it tomorrow, is shotgun versus under center here for Daniel Jones and that functionality. But right there, like, you see it, right? You're averaging 10 yards of play either side of it, essentially, on your completions, but the completion percentage underneath 50% when you're not using it and well above, right? You're talking about a guy that's going to be completing 65, 70+% of his passes over the course of a game, potentially, and doing it at a first down clip rate solely by giving the defense something to think about, which buys Daniel Jones more time, gets him out in space, and lets him find the targets that he wants to hit, to say nothing of some of the drops that may have come there, which we'd have to do in fairness, would have to do a double check. When did some of those key drops come? Were they on play action or non-play action, which might impact these numbers?
Well, keep in mind that it was play action on both of Daniel Jones's 20-yard runouts for touchdowns, which
right, so
he could have just sat back
40 yards.
Yeah, right. He could have just sat back, probably picked apart the defense, having as much time as he wants with no rushers at him. So those numbers back it up, and it's why it's going to be critical if Daniel Jones is out there to utilize the play action and make defenses commit to stopping Saquon Barkley while also getting creative and moving the pocket and getting Daniel Jones out in space if he has that mobility.
So here's actually that it's a really good point that you bring up here, right? So there's two stats we want to hit here, and then something that's being brought up in the live chat right now by Tyrone. And we talked about this before about what we'd like to see more offensively here, regardless of if Wan'Dale, Kadarius Toney, who's going to be out there for them, and they could be used in this capacity as well. On those play actions, we've talked about this in the last couple of episodes, completion percentage versus expected completion percentage, right? Daniel Jones sees a +7 over expected completion percentage when he uses play action. So again, Daniel Jones, when they utilize what has been the best version of it, he's actually also excelling in that capacity too, right? Even in these situations where you'd say the completion percentage is higher as a baseline, let's call it 65%. Daniel Jones is going out and hitting it 72% of the time on those, right? So that matters too, especially when an offense is struggling and doesn't have all the weapons at its disposal. Now, to Tyrone's point, I want to ask you about this because there's a few different things happening in the chat here. Work the big body personnel, use the tight ends, protect it, use Saquon Barkley. We know that Saquon's going to be a big part of this, but we said this a couple times before. I said it going back early in the offseason and early in this season when we've seen the offense struggle. In these play action scenarios, believe that the New York Football Giants, if Wan'Dale Robinson is available, put him in the backfield, split him out behind Daniel Jones with Saquon Barkley. If Wan'Dale's going to be in the slot, show me Matt Breida in the backfield. Show me Gary Brightwell in the backfield. That 3 running back set that they did there for that 14-yard up-the-gut run for Brightwell. If you start lining up that way and the Green Bay Packers want to sell out on stopping Saquon Barkley, go for it. Because guess what? Saquon Barkley had to sacrifice his body a couple of times, taking that fake handoff, jumping into the line of scrimmage, and then allowing Matt Breida, allowing Gary Brightwell, allowing some of these wide receiver weapons to benefit with maybe potentially some of those out-swinging routes from the backfield. Tyrone mentioning potentially some screen plays. That I hesitate a little bit on that simply for the fact that the loss of some of these receivers does impact your receiving blocking capabilities. It doesn't mean that I don't think it's possible. But remember, the one bubble screen they tried to throw to Saquon Barkley required Saquon to break a tackle 9 yards behind the line of scrimmage before he could have some success.
Yeah, and I also see, like, softening up some of the rush from Rashawn Gary, who obviously has been getting to the quarterback.
Yep.
The issue that we have is against Dallas, we thought the same thing, like go at Micah Parsons, and then they just were like, you know what, we're just gonna have DeMarcus Lawrence on the other side, just absolutely
Beat the living crap out of
yes, out of Evan Neal. So teams will kind of play chess on the chessboard doing this stuff. But I do think, we talk about Wan'Dale Robinson getting back. That is going to be huge in terms of our ability to run different plays, to soften up some of that rush. Listen, Saquon is going to get the ball. I saw people talking about 13 personnel. They will have 3 tight ends in this game for quite a bit of the offensive plays. It doesn't mean we have to run the ball every single time, but it means we need the ability to run block and maybe get creative with Tanner Hudson jumping out, Chris Myrick on a short pass, or Bellinger running some of these little curl routes and block and push out left type of plays that he's been doing all season, getting 10 yards a game.
Yeah, and I even wonder, even in that 13 personnel, I still think that being deceptive around what your intentions are there. So that's where, honestly, I'll go back to a guy like Darius Slayton. If he's going to be out there, if you're not going to have some of his other weapons, whoever you think, if Kadarius Toney could be out there, if you can run a single wide receiver set at some points even and just say, you know what? Yes, we're going to make it look like we're stacking the box because on 2nd and 2, we just want to get that first down, and then use the play action, roll Daniel Jones out on the edge, and maybe take that shot if you have that opportunity. Or likewise, you use those tight ends, right? So much about what Kafka and Dable have tried to do offensively is have a game script, build in towards it, and then find a way to shift off of it, right? So set the premise. We're going to use all of our big boys. We're going to try to pile things in here, get yards with Saquon, use our tight ends, and then go for it, right? It's the one thing that they did twice last week with Darius Slayton. It paid off on one, pass interference, didn't pay off on the other. But you saw what that did, though. It pulls the defense away from the line of scrimmage a little bit. It just puts the seed of doubt in their mind that maybe this ball is going to get downfield. The mobility factor is big here. I think it does become important that the Giants, and whatever they're going to do, show a level of versatility and willingness to do 3 or 4 different things just so that you sell them for a quarter that maybe Daniel Jones is mobile. You don't know for sure what he's capable of, right? Keep that little bit of doubt in their minds. The other quarterback in this game, Andy, would be one Aaron Rodgers, who is not someone that has had to rely on the play action pass over the course of his career. Something that we mentioned Jared Goff at the top. The reason why Jared Goff benefits from it so much is because Jared Goff is a top 18-ish kind of quarterback when he's really clicking on all cylinders. Now he's one of the best in the league from a lot of statistical categories. That's the leap you can take from being a middle-of-the-road guy to a top guy. Sometimes the best players in the league at the position don't give an S about what's going to work or not. I'll beat you because I'm better than you.
Yeah. So we talked about how play action helped Daniel Jones. It has helped Aaron Rodgers, especially in the last game, 5 points higher in CPOE just based on play action.
Yep.
But Aaron Rodgers doesn't need it, and there's a couple reasons why. One, he has the fastest release in all of the NFL. He can get the ball out very quickly. The second piece of it is teams just don't blitz the Green Bay Packers. They really don't at the rate that they could.
And the reason punished.
Yeah, the reason why is because Aaron Rodgers is one of the best quarterbacks in the history of the NFL against the blitz. Because what he loves to do is see where there's a cover one or one safety to one side of the field. He knows the blitz is coming. He looks that safety off to one side and he goes deep to the other side, one-on-one matchups. He lives and breathes for it. And when teams blitz Aaron Rodgers, he has the ability with that quick release to get the ball out quickly, get it into space, and pick up those chunk yards for 4, 6, 7. He going into the Patriots game last week, he had 133 passer rating against the blitz on the season. Like, he just chews people up. And so, Adam, what I wanted to ask you about this is, so the Packers played the Ravens last year. So Wink Martindale was the defensive coordinator for the Ravens. So interesting to see what type of defense they played. Nick Foledo on Twitter kind of broke it down and said the Baltimore Ravens blitzed 19.4% of the time in that game, which was the third least that they did the entire season against the Chicago Bears. And, in the last few games, the Giants have blitzed 45% of the time. So we're talking about a drastic difference in what we're expecting to see from what Wink Martindale is going to do to what is effective against Aaron Rodgers. How do you see this playing out?
As I unmute myself because I almost made a big mistake there. I don't. It's tricky, right? My instinct coming into the season would have been to say, well, Wink's gonna wink, right? Wink's gonna Martindale. He brings it, and he's gonna bring it with consistency. I still think so. It's interesting because I think that one, while teams don't bring the blitz a lot against Aaron Rodgers, sometimes the difference also comes down to, though, as we said at the top, this is a new personnel group for Aaron Rodgers. They're still trying to get familiarity. Now he does have Randall Cobb, and we've already seen some of those key moments this season have gone to that veteran wide receiver in those big spots. I still expect that Wink Martindale is going to try to manufacture some of that success. But remember, while you may be getting Leonard Williams back, we talked about Azeez being a little bit dinged up. He may not be able to go. Julian Love is in concussion protocol. If he's not going to be able to go, you're going to put Dane Belton into that role. And that's not to say that any of these guys can't be filled in by. O'Shea Jimenez has played well this season, right? Ward has played well this season. So you have bodies that can help step up in these roles. But the players in behind them, right? What you sacrifice when you bring Dane Belton on a blitz is leaving someone else on a more precarious island. And then we obviously know the Giants are still going to be completely lost out there on that second cornerback spot. Moreau is going to be out there. He's played at least admirably, but we'll have to wait and see. The problem that we also run into from this standpoint, and what Wink is probably looking at, is when the Giants go against so this is the tying it back into this play action, with which Aaron Rodgers saw a better improvement in the second half of that Patriots game than in the first half, where he hardly used it at all. Versus non-play action, they have the second lowest completion percentage against the New York Football Giants, but they're 11 percentage points worse against the play action. So, which is it going to be, right? Where the rubber meets the road. Are the Green Bay Packers going to say, we know how much worse they are when we use play action, but if we do that, will Wink Martindale commit to bringing the heat? In which case, will Aaron Rodgers counterbalance, right? This really is, we say it sometimes on the show, this feels like a real chess match, right? And every time that you make one of these moves, the counter punch that comes back from the Packers side of it and Aaron Rodgers is probably going to dictate what happens over the course of this game. One instance of success, one time that Thibodeau gets home, one time a blitz makes it on a play action pass attempt from Aaron Rodgers. Now you back the Packers away from that mentality, push them back into their run game, and you play into what is a better version of this game for the New York Football Giants defense.
It's fascinating, Adam, because what you're saying basically is Wink Martindale loves to bring pressure, but against this team, that's not the right thing to do, Wink. And then it's like Aaron Rodgers doesn't really like play action as much because he likes to dictate things himself at the line of scrimmage. But Aaron, it's better in this situation to use play action against this defense. You're asking both people to compromise off of the things that they do best in order to be most effective on the field. And I think the trump card clearly in this, and everyone has mentioned it before, is going to be the Packers run game. If Leonard
Yeah.
Williams is healthy and they can stop the run and get the Packers in slightly more predictable down and distance, that's when it doesn't matter if he does play action. That's when he is going to have to drop back, and you know that you can bring pressure and he has to get the ball out quickly. It's when Aaron Rodgers can be two-dimensional, where they have the run or the pass, short or long, don't have to pick up a certain amount of yardage, where he just eats defenses up. So really, it's going to be on that first and second down. Is Leonard Williams, is Dexter Lawrence, is that defensive front getting stops against AJ Dillon and Aaron Jones? It's going to be fascinating, Adam, to see if they can just get a little pushback into the backfield and stop them moving. If they can, then Wink Martindale starts to dictate what he wants to do, as opposed to Aaron Rodgers having his way with that Giants defense.
Yeah, and as I get a little bit more, trying to get a little more updates here. Sorry, I'm just checking to see if we're getting any news and notes coming in this morning. Yeah, here's the weird thing too. So we're listing all this stuff, and I think from a Giants perspective, from a Daniel Jones perspective, at the end of the day, we're talking about what the Giants need to sort out here a little bit to find success. Because even though we're talking about how it's not the same Green Bay Packers offense, and they haven't looked as sharp, and it's about the running game. Okay, fine. But we've seen 3 out of 4 weeks that the Giants have struggled against the run, that the Giants can't find consistency in an area of their game, understanding that they could be exposed in the passing attack potentially. This may just come down to Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon versus Saquon Barkley, right? Like, can Saquon Barkley equal the value of a two-headed monster across from them? And then ultimately, can Daniel Jones, I'm going to put it this way. It's going to be less about his mobility and more about his arm in this one. I really think that it's a combination of the injury to his ankle, along with putting on tape what you did last week to get the win against Chicago, kind of blueprinting to Green Bay. Might want to watch out for this. If they can prevent that and contain Daniel Jones, you're going to put it in his hands. And I'm excited for that, by the way. I want to see Daniel Jones. Give me one guy back. Give me Wan'Dale, right? Let me get Wan'Dale Robinson back in there so I feel like there's another dynamic element on this offense for him. Daniel Jones, make a couple of the key throws that help Saquon Barkley stay successful. Not that 77-yard performance that we had a couple of weeks ago, which was great from Saquon, but that was a product of having to grind it out, right? You got to be a part of the solution in this one. And Daniel Jones has not been a part of the problem in any of their games to this point. But you use the term, he needs to be a force multiplier in this game in a somewhat significant way. And that could be 3 passes that are for 25 and 40 yards, one big pass play down the field, right? You're going to have to do something like that, because I can see the world where the Giants get behind, down a score or something in this one, and all of a sudden, you're testing that metal of sticking to the game script, keep grinding it out with Saquon Barkley. And a last footnote here, as long as this end of the day has become, the Green Bay Packers, they only give up 168 passing yards per game. That's 3rd best in the league. They only give up 70. Where are they in excuse me. Where do they end up going here? Oh, I lost the stat. They're pretty suspect against middle of the road there at 126. I mean, that's middle of the pack in the league, but 126 rushing yards per game. So there's the exposable element of this, but I don't know, man. I guess it's just, what you do best versus what you do best. And I wouldn't have thought coming into this game that I would be as, let's see. Right? I'm far closer to being like, maybe we can beat the Packers on Sunday, because they're not the same team that they were last year, at least in this moment.
Simple answer. The Packers give up rushing yards. Saquon will get some rushing yards.
Yeah.
You mentioned 168 yards per passing per game. The Giants have to outdo 168 yards in the air in order to win this game. The Giants will not win this game 13-10 with Saquon Barkley running for 135 yards. They will need Daniel Jones to be effective in the passing game in order to win in London come Sunday.
Yeah, that'll probably be the case, my friends. And by the way, in case you're wondering, the New York Football Giants are 2, 4, 6, 8th in the league in terms of passing yards allowed per game. We understand that they are closer to that Green Bay Packers line when it comes against the run. And what I mean by that is 6 or 7 spots worse. They are only 27th in the league, allowing 141. If the ball isn't on your side, if the offense doesn't have it, that can make it tricky. Tomorrow, though, we are going to go ahead and give an opportunity to take a look at the betting lines, which has been interesting, I think, opening up here this week. We're going to look at some props, obviously, give our final predictions, and then individual matchups that we really like here, even specifically inside of the wide receiver room. I'm going to give you some opportunities where the New York Football Giants should try to have some success against the Packers defense that has not been quite where they wanted it to be, in large part due to the struggles of the offensive side. On YouTube, Andrew, you can go ahead and like it, subscribe it, watch it, love it, want more of it. We really appreciate all the interactions and the comments that we're giving up here. The podcast feed's available for you. We'll get those needs fulfilled. In the meantime, early Sunday morning, Tilt on tap until tomorrow when we continue to break this one down, as Andy Mackowitz would want, need, and nay demand the people know.
As always, let's go Big Blue.